My name is Sean. Just gonna share my screen here. Okay, so first of all, thank you for everyone for coming, and thank you to Kanho and Hong for organizing Starknet Vietnam. Really appreciate this opportunity to be speaking to everyone here remotely. So today I'm going to be talking about scaling Web3 with Starknet and JavaScript. And alongside the Starknet.JS team is Ivan and Tony from Shard Labs. So I'm going to start with a brief introduction of myself. I started the library called Starknet.JS, and over the past few years, I've also done a lot of open source work in the crypto and blockchain space. And I've also built a lot of products that sort of in the crypto space. So that's how I really got involved in blockchain and crypto in general. So I think we should start a little bit more fundamentally, like why should we even care about what Web3 and what's something that I think Starknet really brings into the crypto and blockchain ecosystem. So I think some of the fundamental things about Web3 is like sovereign ownership, right? I own my own digital value. Everything is permissionless, so you don't need permission from anyone, and it's extremely secure, right? If you do have value that is owned by the internet, you probably want it to be very secure, even though it's not owned by one single party. So I think these are the sort of three fundamental pillars that I will go into a little bit further. So ownership, right? You don't want ownership of digital value from anyone except for yourself, right? Your funds are not owned by a bank. It's not owned by a company. Right, it's not like a big company owns all your digital value and can change the rules on you anytime. And even by the government, right? The government cannot print new currency to perhaps devalue the currency that you have. And everything is done in code, so everything is open, and basically you can see the rules extremely transparently. It's permissionless, right? So most of the code is open source. Anyone can fork, meaning that if you don't like how the protocol is programmed, you can create your own rules. Once the protocol is available, you can deploy smart contracts. Nobody can really, well, people can try to stop or censor you, but they can't really do that very easily. And anyone can sort of spin up their own nodes as well to sort of protect and secure the network. And it's also very secure, right? There's not a single point of failure. For example, if you're inside a bank and then the bank database gets compromised, millions of credit card records could be stolen, right? But then in crypto, the attack surface is relatively smaller. So if I have my own wallet, if my wallet gets compromised, it's only my wallet, right? It's not like everyone's wallet will be compromised. And in crypto, usually people are aligned incentively to work together. For example, nodes, they try to figure out, like in proof of work, they try to find the hash with the right amount of leading zeros. So then they will actually get rewarded. And by doing that, they also secure the network. And also with security, the more people that participate in this ecosystem, the more secure the blockchain is, right? Because everyone is trying to secure the network, which makes the network even more secure. So what are some of the use cases in Web3? I think the most obvious ones are DeFi and NFTs, right? DeFi is like finance without a middle entity sort of dictating all the rules. And then NFTs is sort of you own a sort of a piece of digital asset that can represent anything digitally. So I think what's really interesting in DeFi is there, like I said, right? There's no middleman. So everything is ran by open code, so you can know very transparently what the rules are. And then because this, like, you don't need clearing houses to be facilitating transfers, right? Like, let's say if I send a transaction overseas, right, there's going to be many clearing houses that go through, and that's why it takes a lot of time and also a lot of fees, right? Every time it goes through a new goes through a new middleman to check what's going on, you have to pay additional fee. So I think in DeFi, it's a lot more efficient because you just look at the code, and the code is executed by nodes in the network, right? And then in that sense, because anyone can sort of deploy that code, money becomes, or value becomes, programmable. And then for NFTs, right, people can create a piece of digital asset and sell it independently. And the use case here is people, for the first time, they can really make a living creating digital art independently, right? Previously, if I was a digital artist, I may have to sort of be part of a marketing agency or a gaming company, right? But now I can sell my digital art independently, just because previously there was no way you can really verify you were the original owner of the digital property. But now with NFTs, you can really do that. So in that sense, culture is really being tokenized on the internet, right? Because people now can own a piece of digital content that's online. So now that you know, now that some of these things are use cases we see in Web3, what are some of the challenges? I think the most obvious one is the scalability trilemma, right? Like you can only pick two of the three, and traditionally with the most popular blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum, they usually prioritize decentralization and security, which I think, in my opinion, is the right trade-off, because if you have value that's stored online, you probably want it to be secure, right? You probably don't want it to be for other people to be able to attack it and compromise a large number of people easily. And you also probably want it to be decentralized, so there's not one single party that owns the value that you have. But obviously, this comes in expense of scalability. So right now, when you make transactions in traditional blockchains, it's much more expensive. So how does Starknet solve this issue? Right, we're at a Starknet conference, so I think it's good to go over sort of what Starknet is doing to specifically tackle this problem. So how Starknet really works is you have a lot of transactions on Starknet, and then what they do is they batch many transactions into a single, well, they call it zero knowledge proof, and then they send a single transaction to Starknet, and then that proof would include many transactions on Starknet. So essentially, I think a good example is you can think about it like as when you're zipping a bunch of files into a zip file, right? When you zip all these files together, it becomes smaller. And then in this case, what sort of Starknet is doing, they're taking all these transactions, they're creating a zip, minifying it, and then sending it to Ethereum. So now Ethereum only has to process one transaction rather than all of the thousands of transactions that it would otherwise have to process. So this sort of leads to up to 100x, right, in transaction fee savings, because sort of one transaction is able to, you're able to verify one transaction before you had to do many instead. So what is Starknet.JS? Like Starknet.JS is a library that contracts on Starknet communicate to. So right now, if you're looking at a dApp, for example, on Starknet, there's JediSwap, right? When you're talking to JediSwap, the website itself has to talk to the Starknet network, and JediSwap could be using Starknet.JS, right, to talk to the network. So basically, any website or dApp or mobile JavaScript website that wants to talk to the Starknet network, they would use Starknet.JS. So let's go into how is Starknet.JS engineered, right? Starknet.JS takes a lot of inspiration from Ethers.js, one of the primary libraries in Ethereum, and And yeah, so we pretty much split it into 4 main interfaces: the provider interface, the account interface, signer, and contract. And I will go into more detail about each of these interfaces. So the provider interface is the interface that communicates with the node, right? So right now there's sort of 2 nodes in Starknet. One is the feeder gateway, which is the central sequencer ran by Starkware. And now more recently, we have RPC nodes. So those are read-only nodes that you can run locally. And I think the most popular read-only node is Pathfinder, but you could also use like Juno and other nodes that may be coming out later. So these are things that so the provider API allows you to talk to the Starknet blockchain or network. So these are things like reading data from the blockchain, and also operations like changing the Starknet chain can also be done with a provider. But I think what we've seen is mostly it's done by getting data on the blockchain. So there's also the account API, which sort of extends the provider, but it introduces new methods that allow you to create and verify signatures with a custom signer. So so the account API is primarily used to write or change the Starknet blockchain state, because in Starknet, everything has to go through an account contract because of account abstraction. So accounts pretty much execute functions in Starknet. So usually accounts are used to do write operations because you need an account to actually change the state of Starknet. And the signer API allows you to sign transactions and messages, right, to verify that you are the correct account owner. So in the future, right now it's mostly like the signer supports like the Open Zeppelin and the Argent accounts, but in the future, the signer could potentially support things like hardware wallets like Ledger and other signers that sign messages or transactions in a different or unique way. For example, something we saw from Cartridge was they sign transactions with your fingerprint, right? So if you're in Safari and then you want to sign a transaction, you just give your fingerprint, and that's sort of the signature. So that was something we found that's very cool that potentially could be using the signer API. And then there's the contract API where you can sort of call and invoke a specific contract on Starknet. It also allows you to do a lot of like data transformations, because a lot of the data on Starknet is in felt, and sometimes you need to translate it to a specific format that users can understand. So that's sort of what the contract API helps you do. So I'm gonna run through a really quick demo that I sort of wrote initially and now is maintained by the Shard Labs team. Try to share my screen. So so now we're trying to this is a sort of demo of a user creating an account contract, an ERC20 contract, which is a token contract, and then minting a couple of ERC20 tokens, and then transferring those ERC20 tokens to his account. So first thing we need to do is we need to set the URL for your provider. So that could be either feeder gateway, or also it could be your RPC node, right? I think in the future, the feeder gateway will be deprecated because Starknet is trying to decentralize. So in the future, I think most likely these the provider you will be setting will most likely be a node instead of using the centralized sequencer. So here I'm reading the Open Zeppelin account contract, right? And then I'm also generating a private and public key. and then I'm deploying that account to Starknet, right? And then I need to make sure that I have some tokens in. After I deploy that account, I need to make sure I have some tokens in the account so that I can actually use it, right? Because when you run transactions, you need to pay a gas fee, and if you don't have any tokens, you can't pay for the gas. So we sort of ask you in the demo, did you add funds to your account, right? And you can continue if you hit yes. So now we're gonna move on to the ERC20 contract, right? And then we need to deploy the ERC20 contract. And then we wait for the ERC20 contract to be deployed on Starknet. And then now we sort of create the new we create a new contract object, right? And then we use the new the ERC20 contract that we just applied, and then we use the contract implementation, and then now we can actually interact with the contract object, right? Because we just created a contract object, and then we can call the functions on our new contract. So we can do like ERC20. So I define ERC20 here, and then I can start minting, right? Because mint is a function on the ERC20 contract, and then I can mint it to my account that I just created. So I mint 1,000 tokens, right, to my account, and then I set a fee because like now, when I first started in Starknet, we didn't have gas fees, but now we actually do. So we set a very high max fee, but the actual fee that you pay, I think, is much less. But regardless, you still have to set a gas fee because now Starknet actually requires it. So now we wait for the transaction to be accepted so that we can actually mint the tokens to our address. And then we can check how much, what is the balance, right? So this is a read operation on the account, on the ERC20 contract, ERC20.balance of, and then we pass in the account that we just deployed. And we should get, I think, what we minted, so we should get 1,000 here. And then we try to do a transfer, right? Let's say I want to transfer 10 tokens back to the ERC20 contract. So now I can take my account API. So this is part of the account API, the account we just created, and then we can execute the transfer function on the ERC20 contract. And then we also have to set a max fee here. And then we wait for it to be to arrive in the so we're transferring back to the ERC20 contract. So we wait for it to arrive in the ERC20, and then we can check the balance of the ERC20, and we should have the balance back in the ERC20 contract. So you can try and play around with this code. We try to keep it up to date because like there's so many new versions of Starknet coming out that sometimes our demo needs to be updated. So feel free to use it, and if it doesn't work, please feel free to open an issue and we'll try to fix it as soon as we can. So the GitHub repo is here. So it's my GitHub, which is 0xs34ns, and then /Starknet.JS workshop. Maybe we can share these slides after the talk as well, so you can take a look. Yeah, that's it. I'm also one of the founders of Aspect.co, and one of the biggest NFT marketplaces on Starknet. And I hope you enjoy, building in Starknet, even though we're very early. I think things are being improved dramatically. So I hope this tutorial helps you as you explore your journey with Starknet. So that concludes my talk, and thank you very much for listening.